Dark Fringe Radio, your premier source for the paranormal, conspiracy theory, and true crime.
Denial is the most predictable of all human responses.
Conspiracy theorists of the world unite.
He is refining his methods. He is evolving.
There have been other times when a danger upon the world required the services of singular individuals.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition and episode of Dark Fringe Radio. I am your host, Will Martinez, and of course, my co-host, as always, Mr. Jay Colosi. Jay, how you doing tonight, brother?
Man, bleeding-tastic, Brad. I don't know why I suddenly went bleeding. I was going to say...
Yeah, bleeding's not such a good thing.
I know, it's like, I get that sound. So
unless you're a vampire, then you're, it's all good. But
I'm good.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, listen, tonight, episode 103, and tonight I had a very good interview with an author and a journalist by the name of Ashley Rindsberg. He wrote a book called The Gray Lady Winked, and it's a tell-all about how the New York Times, of course, one of the most influential, newspapers of all time, basically, has falsified a lot of information and put a lot of propaganda out there, and it's actually
it's always been a propaganda machine.
Yeah,
That was that's really subtle. I knew that shit back in the 80s before my woke self came out,
bro. And it actually goes before that. It even goes in the 40s and the 30s, and I mean, it really that's what we talk about, how long ago it actually goes back, and how many countries were affected by these falsified reports. There was presidents killed, there was wars started. You name it, it happened. So Ashley really put it together in this book called The Gray Lady Winked. It's the GRAY. So thegrayladywink.com. Make sure you go there, check out the book, get a copy for yourself. It's really good. A lot of people are really talking about it. I mean, it really exposes, Jay, the truth about, what we deal with on a daily basis when it comes to mainstream media. Every day we're bombarded with mainstream media, not like today because Facebook was absolutely closed down for the day and people were fucking losing their goddamn mind. Yeah. Jay included.
He's poking at me, guys. That was a shot at me.
No, seriously, everybody was freaking out. There's even memes talking about it right now. There's a meme with Zuckerberg, and he's like, "I got you scared, didn't I?"
Yeah, scared, didn't I? As soon as I saw it, I went, "Yes, you did."
Yes, you did, sir. Right? So it's a really interesting during this time now where we're bombarded with so much media, Jay. Whether it be social media, TV. Yeah, TV, print, radio, not so much radio anymore. I mean, a lot of people actually, have gone away from the FM radio source and really have gone into more what we do, which is podcasts.
I was thinking about that just today, William. I drive around a lot for my job, people. So I'm always in my car. And today, on my way home from my last class, I had left my cell phone in one of the bins. So I had to listen to the radio.
You were forced.
Wait, when was the last time you listened to FM radio?
It's been a minute. I listen to it every once in a while when I'm with my son in the car, and every once in a while he'll go through the channels because he likes going through all the channels. But
97.9 is the only thing that is remotely like everything else. It sounds bargain basement. It sounds like AM used to sound. I was quite taken back. I was like, I can see these people in these tiny little sheds now, and they're like, 1035 is their call sign. That's their frequency. And it's not 1035 she like it was when we grew up. Like it was a powerhouse, man, had all the heavy metal. Now it's some little church lady just talking about how nice that is that Easter's gonna be coming here soon. Just a few months.
Or you got that one lady.
Christ.
Or you got that one lady with the real soft-spoken voice, the one who's always dedicating songs to other lovers on the air.
Sunny Quinn. She was a professor of mine. She's one of my instructors for my broadcasting degree. Sunny Quinn.
Yeah.
Who, oddly enough, is married to the drummer for Grand Funk Railroad.
Really?
Guy's like 6'7".
Jeez Louise. But listen, I mean, of course, that lady always comes to mind when you talk about FM, radio,
Sonny Quinn, man. Sonny Quinn on Sunday Morning 4.3. She was just, or there was Delilah, the overnight.
That's the one I'm talking about. Delilah, that one. Yeah. That bitch.
Delilah. No, if you're out there and you don't know Delilah, read you a book.
Oh Lord. Yeah, no. I mean, but there's no more radio personalities anymore.
None.
Think about it. I mean,
None.
Who was the last radio personality? Like the big one?
Down here, it's down to Kevin in Virginia, and that's it.
That's it. I mean,
show.
Who was before
and they've been
that?
on since we were in high school.
Stern. When he was still down here, when he was still broadcasting out of Miami.
I mean, he's still a name. He's so far the other angle. I mean, he's
right. And he's not even on radio. He's on satellite.
He's on XFM.
Not the same thing.
It's totally different.
Right. Totally absolutely. Agreed. Well, anyway, so I don't know how we got on that tangent, but that's basically what we're talking about tonight here, Jay, with our interview with Ashley Rindsberg. So make sure you stick around and check that out. I just want to do some housekeeping for tonight. Just want to remind everybody
how house weeding.
Yeah.
House just said house weeding.
Woo! Some Freudian slip there. Housekeeping.
So we got on that other topic. Housekeeping.
Are you doing the pot? Are you doing the pot again, Will? Anyways, that's like something like our moms would say, our dads. Are you doing the pot again?
Are you doing the pot?
Are you doing the pot? Anyways, but how you can listen to the podcast, very important. You can go right to our website, darkfringeradio.com. Make sure you go ahead and check it out. And go straight there. You can also see all the stuff that we post on social media, and also we have all these things that we're posting on a daily basis as far as stories and news that is coming out, new movies, TV, video games. I mean, we're constantly putting stuff up there, so make sure you check it out, darkfringeradio.com. And also, any of the investigations that we've done in the past, you can go there as well and check out all the audio that we've actually posted. I've posted all the stuff on there, Jay. All the audio's on there, so it's really cool. So everybody can just go right there and just soak it up. So make sure you go there, darkfringeradio.com, and check it out. And of course, we are on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Dark Fringe Radio. And don't forget our YouTube channel. Say again?
As long as they're up.
Yeah, as long as they're up, exactly. And also want to remind everybody our YouTube page at Dark Fringe Radio. That's getting a lot of steam as of late. So make sure you go on there, subscribe. That really helps us out. And make sure you like all our videos. We come out with every other week basis. That's what we're pretty much doing right now. But we're going to be doing some live stuff here in the future. Month of October is going to be really hot for us, Jay. Yeah, and we're going to try to do some live watch-alongs on Fridays for the month of October. So we got that planned for you guys, and of course, still coming out with podcasts on a weekly basis. So don't go anywhere. We have a lot of stuff coming up here in the month of October. So that's it for the intro, Jay. Wanted to get into one piece of news that I thought was kind of cool that I thought we should talk about. But Did you hear this? That came out on September 27th, Jay. So not that long ago, last week. Sammy Hagar claims that he was abducted by aliens and later met more extraterrestrials. Did you hear about this one?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So, of course, you may know him as the Red Rocker. He was, the lead singer of Montrose.
That's why he couldn't drive 55. That and the blood.
That and his blood alcohol level probably had a lot to do with it, too. But that Cabo Wabo tequila that he fucking promotes, which is great tequila. Actually, it's not that bad. I've actually had it before. It's actually pretty damn good.
That's good stuff.
But he talked about an experience that he had, Jay, and he says that it 100% happened. He said it happened about 4:00 in the morning, pitch black, dead sleep, and he said felt like he was like being programmed, like somebody was tapping into his mind, like it was a string from his head, like 13 miles up a mountain. You know what I mean? It just like that's what he felt. Wow. And right where he was at that moment, he said that he saw an object that was like right out the distance from his house, and that there was two people in it. There were two creatures, and he said he was about 19 years old. This happened about 1964, 65-ish. So, he was obviously fairly young at that time.
Yeah.
But he was really candid about this experience, Jay. And he said that he could feel like them talking to each other, telepathically. And they knew like the moment that he was waking up, because they were like, oh, he's waking up, and then he could kind of overhear this conversation telepathically. And so it's a really interesting story. I want to, please, tell our guests and people that are watching this podcast, go to our website, darkfringeradio.com, and the story is there. It's a really interesting story, Jay. I mean, do you think this was a legit kind of thing, or was it just a product of the mid 60s?
I can't call Van Hagar a liar. I can't do it. So it's actually 100% real.
There you go. You're not going to call out Hagar, right?
Would never think to do it. So
yeah.
No, well, listen, if Van Hagar says he was brought up to the stars and talked to some green people, then I'm with him.
Hey,
I'm
man.
with him, 100%.
Yeah. And, he also revealed that it wasn't his only encounter. He said he had another one where he was hanging out at Lake Placid. And, he was in a, log cabin, didn't have any electricity. It was like the early 80s, 81, 82. And all of a sudden these guys are in the cabin without even like coming into the door. They all of a sudden just appeared there. Yeah, it was really freaky. Yeah. He said that he had a hard time with that one encounter because they were there. All of a sudden, there was no doors open, no windows open, and all of a sudden you see these beings in your house. So it's a pretty nerve-wracking kind of situation. But yeah, I mean, pretty interesting thing from Sammy Hagar. I mean, obviously he's not known to be much of a psychedelic dude, or like
he's not been known to be one to really even be out there talking.
Right, he's like one of the more quiet dudes.
He's out to have a good time. The only thing you ever hear is about him partying, trying to be cool with all of Van Halen. No matter what, and drinking tequila. I mean, that's really all you ever hear from him. And
so
come out and say that and kind of out of the blue like that. I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting. So, again, I just wanted to point that news article out to you there, Jay, because I thought that was pretty cool. One of our obviously rock idols from that time, coming out and saying that he had a pretty substantial experiences, not only once but more than once, with these beings. So I thought that was a pretty good story. But Jay, of course, that leads us to what the F, Florida man. And for those that don't know, and are
that time of year, right?
Yeah, of course it is. And for the uninitiated, the ones that don't know, Jay, what the F, Florida man is a segment that Jay does, and he scours the internet for hours and looks for stories that come out of this crazy state of South Florida, which is pretty not hard to find, but all the shit that's going on here. So Jay, what do you have for us this week for what the F, Florida man?
Yeah, you say scour. You say scour. Skim.
You skim. Oh yeah, it doesn't take much, right? Nah.
Second, this would be the second thing I saw today.
Oh wow.
Okay, I went with the second one. That's how deep I dove.
That's
into,
it.
Florida man was the second one.
The second one. Let's hear it.
Davie, Florida.
Okay.
A man was mauled by a captive black leopard.
Oh, wow. That doesn't happen every day.
Backyard zoo.
Wow. Let's hear this, Jay. I want to hear this. Give us some deets.
Man pays $150 for the full contact experience.
Oh, he got that. And not in the good way either. I mean, not the like Craigslist kind of way.
No. Tiger King kind of.
Yeah. Some Carol Baskin action.
Serious Carol Baskin. So, WPLG reported that the man paid $150 for the full contact experience with the black leopard, which allowed him to play with it and take pictures.
Wow.
Those are going to be some great memories, kids. Kodak moments.
Here's the point where Grandpa got his thorax ripped out of his neck. No.
So the owner runs obviously an unlicensed animal sanctuary for rare and endangered animals.
Jeez.
The man was attacked as soon as he entered the enclosure. The injuries were so severe that his scalp was hanging from his head. People, if you are only paying $150 to go meet a black leopard and it's in someone's backyard, y'all's getting ripped off, and then you're getting ripped up.
Listen, tigers and lions are wild animals. They're wild. And I don't care how much somebody trains them. They can go off. Have you ever touched a house cat, Jay? One of your own house cats, and all of a sudden just fucks up your arm for no goddamn reason?
Scars to prove.
Scars, right?
Scars.
Yes, you're a cat person. You've had cats all your life. I remember all the cats in your house. They would fuck you up if you fucking pet them the wrong way, or if they didn't want you to be pet at that point, that moment. You know what I mean? Now, that's a small house cat.
I have on my hand. I don't know if you guys can see those right there. It was right before Hurricane Andrew, and I was holding my cat, trying to get her inside, and I accidentally stepped on some on. And I had this cat at this point for about 5 years. So the cat knew me well, and it bit through my hand, all the way through.
Holy shit!
Punctured the hand all the way, both sides, and then the cat ran up my chest and used my back as a springboard.
Nice.
So the marks, the actual
claw marks,
they were lacerations. It was awful. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was a little 10-pound black cat.
Right. Imagine a 110-pound leopard tiger or whatever the fuck. One swipe.
Black leopard. And that animal's 200 to 300 pounds.
Oh, gosh, man.
Anyways. I remember have you ever done those like tiger experiences?
Not like I did one of those like that.
I did one at the Busch Gardens.
No.
And as soon as they opened the gate to let us in, there was one. It was a Siberian, some kind of Siberian Bengal, right?
Bengal white tiger,
white, gorgeous. And it just made this sound. It wasn't a growl. They called it a chop. It was just like this kind of low, like. And the hair on the back of my neck was up because I didn't need to speak the language to know what that animal was telling me. That animal was telling me if there wasn't that fence there, I'd be a snack.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I started looking at who I had to outrun.
Wow. Yeah, man, that's a really harrowing experience, man. I don't have the balls to do something like that. I find tigers to be very majestic animals. I love tigers. I mean, I think they're probably one of the top three animals for me. But I respect the shit out of them. I don't even have the balls to do something like that, what you did there, Jay. I mean, honestly, because I've seen enough videos. I've seen enough videos on YouTube.
I was looking at the safari woman. I'm like, I know I could trip you up just enough.
Right. Let you fall first.
You work with these cats. They deserve one for you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy because we see a lot of these clandestine things like this where people have these wild exotic animals and they'll pay or they'll charge people to come in so they can have this experience with these animals, and it's just obviously it never ends good. It never ends well. It never ends well. I mean, even in the Tiger King series, I mean, that was one of the biggest crux of that whole series was this guy running an licensed unregulated zoo, and it was a big type of zoo. Imagine a bunch of these smaller ones, you know what I mean, that may have just one or two tigers, you know what I mean. So again, people, please don't encourage any of that kind of shit. Please stay away from it. You want to see tigers, look them up on YouTube. There's no reason. Or you know what, if you have enough money, go on one of those safari things in Africa where you're like in those caged where in a fucking truck in the back, and you can let the tigers jump on the cage and shit while you're inside of it. Do that. Go crazy. But don't do this other shit where, you're going to pay some, crazy ass redneck dude that has a fucking leopard in his backyard, $150 so you can have the, ultimate experience with a cat. That's just crazy. Don't do stupid shit like that.
So no, he did not. I will give the guy this. He didn't mismarket it.
No,
there was no miswording. He got the full contact experience.
He did. He certainly did. I mean, again, I don't think that's what he was looking for at the end of the day, but he got more than what he bargained for, and that's what happens. So a good lesson to be learned there, Jay. Thanks again for that story for What the F Florida, man. I really appreciate it. We're going to get into our interview here with Ashley Rindsberg. Of course, you can check out his book, The Gray Lady Winked. That's GRAY. So that's thegrayladywinked.com. And you can go right to that website and check out the book. I highly recommend it. And we're going to get into our interview here with Ashley Rindsberg from The Gray Lady Winked.
My name is James Piles. I'm an author. I've written the short story the recall, and you can find my work at www.poweredbyrobots.com, and I'm being interviewed at darkfringeradio.com.
All right, Dark Fringe Radio listeners, thank you for joining us in another edition. And tonight we have a very special guest. His name is Ashley Rindsberg, and he's a novelist, essayist, and a freelance journalist. He's the author of The Gray Lady Winked, and it's a great work piece that he put together of nonfiction that it talks about one of the world's most powerful media outlet and how they alter basically history and the edits they have done in their publications for their own agenda, basically. And Rindsberg is also an author of The Tel Aviv Stories, which is a collection of short fiction stories that shines a light on the underclass of the famous Levantine city. And in 2010, Rindsberg, he also traveled to Nicaragua to investigate the disappearance of his best friend, and an experience that inspired his forthcoming novel, He Falls Alone. So welcome, Mr. Ashley Rindsberg, to Dark Fringe Radio. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
And listen, thank you so much. And listen, this book that you've come out with, it's really a kind of like a very a tell-all when it comes to talking about one of the world's, like we said in the intro, the world's biggest media outlet and how influential they are. And what motivated you to write this book?
Well, I think like a lot of people out there, you sort of get the sense that not everything is what it seems.
Mm-hmm.
You read the news, and I think a lot of us grew up sort of trusting it. We came from, a generation of people who did trust it, and the generation before that one even more so. Right. But you started sort of get a sense that it's just not what the reality doesn't match the picture that's being painted. And I always sort of had that sense, even though I did have some trust in the media. But it was when I was reading a book of history by a great journalist named William Shirer, who was in Europe during World War II, reporting from the ground. Mm. And in this book of history, he wrote sort of in a footnote that on the eve of World War II, the New York Times printed that Poland invaded Germany. And Germany was just sort of retaliating when it sent its army in.
Which is completely untrue.
Yeah, it kind of was like, the tires screeching to a halt. You're like, what?
Right.
That's where I was like, what, is that possible? Could the New York Times, the gray lady, as everybody calls it, because it's reporting it's like down the middle, really dry, just kind of like facts only. It's very gray. It's not very flashy. Could that newspaper we all know, and I think, some people, some among us, including myself at the time, loved, have printed something so wrong? And especially, this was 1939. This was not like the Nazis just appeared on the scene yesterday. They've been around for a decade. That people would watch them commit horrendous and heinous acts of persecution of Jews, of all sorts of people. And they still sort of could believe what indeed was actually Nazi propaganda, that the ploy was created by high-ranking Nazis to fool world media into thinking that Polish guerrillas had invaded a German radio station, a place called Gleiwitz, and killed a bunch of Germans, and that the Germans were just fed up with the belligerence of the Polish and were just sending in the troops. And when it was published in the West's most influential news outlet, the New York Times, that was like the crowning achievement of this propaganda blitz that kicked off World War II. Right. So, and it's even more disturbing that nobody really talks about this. Like no one knows about it. No one really goes into it. And that just got me really wanting to learn more about this episode. And then once I dug into the background of what happened there, who were the players, what went down, I wanted to understand, did this happen in other cases of similar historical importance and significance? And it turns out it did. Absolutely. And that's what your book basically goes over, all these different instances
throughout American history, where the news was reported or purported one way, and how the times have just really we were talking about World War II, and one of the points that was made, I believe in your book, was that one of the correspondents from Berlin for the New York Times was a Nazi supporter. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's sort of what ties all these pieces together regarding the New York Times' reporting on Nazi Germany, which was very favorable. It was so favorable that the Nazis were actually reading New York Times articles on their radio broadcasts to their own people, because they really cast them in a good light. That was as just one example, the Berlin Olympics of 1936, the Nazi Olympics, which the rest of the world and most American media recognized as another propaganda ploy to make the Nazis look good, to sort of sanitize their image, were described by the New York Times as the greatest sporting event of all time. I mean, what a crazy statement to make.
Yeah, that is.
When you're watching Nazis goose stepping down the streets of Berlin and Jewish athletes being excluded from the games because they were Jewish and because they were being persecuted in all walks of German life, and Hitler refusing to shake the hand of Jesse Owens because he was black, and on and on and on and on and on. And it's just this wasn't 1736. This was 1936.
Yeah, that's that's the part that most people forget, that it really wasn't that long ago. We think of 1936 and we're thinking that's centuries ago, and it's not. It's less than 100 years ago. And I think people forget that a lot of times. They see things throughout history and they really kind of put it in the back of their head and don't realize how soon, how much we've actually advanced, obviously, as a society, but how soon that happened. It wasn't that long ago. And the thing with World War II was one of the biggest things. I mean, it seemed like it continued from World War II onto all other wars, like the Vietnam Wars as well. Another one of the points that was made, I believe, in the book was, how there was basically the New York Times put two correspondents, one on each side of an issue regarding the Vietnam crisis, and reported this whole thing. Something happened, and it really didn't happen, which sparked a whole overthrow of the Vietnam government.
Yeah, there were two reporters sequentially. So the first reporter was a very famous reporter and sort of really highly regarded in the world of journalism. His name was David Halberstam, and he was young. He was a graduate of Harvard. He was a very arrogant guy, and he really didn't like what he saw in Vietnam. Lots of people didn't, of course, but his job was to report the news, to gather the facts and sort of give them to the people, let them decide. But that's not the approach he adopted. He wanted to make a change. He wanted to prove to the world that the South Vietnamese government, which was America's partner in fighting the North Vietnamese communists, was corrupt and abusive. And he would go to any and all lengths to show that. And part of that was, as one representative example, he really was sort of developing this narrative that the South Vietnamese government was cracking down on Buddhist monks in Vietnam and abusing them and violating their human rights and killing them. Mm-hmm. And that was a pretty big claim to make when you're saying America's partnering with a government that is murdering Buddhist monks. And he reported a major story about, I think it was 37, it was either 33 or 37, it was in the 30s, Buddhist monks who were supposedly killed by the South Vietnamese government. And this, of course, made international headlines. I mean, it's a huge story. When the UN came to investigate the massacre, they found all 30 whatever of those monks alive. Not one of them was dead. That was never reported by the Times. That was never corrected. They didn't go back and make a big hoopla about their misreporting. But over time, these types of stories began to paint a picture of a brutal South Vietnamese government that could not be trusted, that could not be relied upon. And there were forces within the American government that wanted to overthrow the South Vietnamese government and install a new government in its place. And with this backing of the New York Times building these narratives, they eventually succeeded, and it was partially backed by the CIA. It resulted in the assassination of the president of South Vietnam. And when John F. Kennedy learned about this, he wept, he cried. He, according to Robert McNamara, his Secretary of Defense, he was more upset than McNamara had ever seen him. And that was for two reasons. One, Diem, who was the president of South Vietnam, was a fellow Catholic. But more importantly, Kennedy knew that in order for American troops to withdraw from Vietnam, which he wanted to do by mid-1960s, he needed a stable partner. And when Diem was murdered and the government was overthrown, he lost that partner. And America was in that war for 10 more years as a result. So you see this meddling by these reporters who took it on themselves to sort of kind of put their fingers into history rather than just to kind of gather up the facts. It had disastrous consequences. And that's the theme we see again and again and again, that the newspaper's interests got in the way of the truth.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, one thing that I noticed that was really interesting and that really opened my eyes up to a lot of what is written in these publications is when these reporters, and this is what, when you explained how this one particular reporter, David Halbstrand, he kind of took a left turn and, he started citing anonymous sources. And that was kind of a thing that was really unheard of at that time, but then started to kind of catch on. And it was because obviously, if you had no source really, then you were able to really kind of push that propaganda or that narrative. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, Halberstam, one of the big issues in his reporting was that he actually relied on a source that turned out to be a Vietnamese spy, a North Vietnamese spy. Right. He was feeding him disinformation. And Halberstam published it, and these were great scoops because when you're getting that kind of access and it's corroborated, it's quote unquote corroborated, you're getting good scoops, you get good placement, your stories get placed on the front page, and it builds your profile. And the New York Times is very happy because they look like they're really getting the goods. But it turns out that he was being used as a tool by the North Vietnamese government through this source who was a spy. And even when it came out, was revealed that one of his major sources was a spy, he never really recanted or apologized for the damage that was done. And he even continued to back up his own reporting and said, well, the reporting was still accurate and true, where that's no longer the case. Like when you're being fed misinformation, disinformation by a spy, you can't rely on that. But that was really part and parcel to the kind of work that he was doing there, and his colleague Neil Sheehan, which again was really more for them about painting a picture first that they wanted to see, but then sort of cobbling together the pieces to make it seem as if that were the reality, when it really necessarily wasn't the reality. It was just kind of what they wanted to show the world, and they did whatever it took to show the world that picture, including sourcing from the spy.
What's interesting, Ashley, is that, we hear about this situation, right? You outlined this whole situation in your book, The Gray Lady Winked. The thing is that it seems like this type of journalism is starting to become more prevalent now more than ever. As the years have come by, I mean, the terminology fake news is something that has been, at a fever pitch within the last 5 years. What's your whole take on that? I mean, is it going to get any better or is it going to get worse?
I think it's going to do both. And I think the way it's going to happen is that, and what we're seeing happen is that the news media is increasingly in the hands of a very small number of very big companies. Mm-hmm. If you look at who owns ABC News and NBC, it's CBS. These are gigantic companies like Comcast, Viacom, Disney. We're really Cox talking Media. About we're talking about billion-dollar conglomerates, right? And they have serious business interests that they will not allow to be superseded by certain things, including the truth. In many cases, it's not always the case, but it is increasingly the case. And what you have is this sort of like coagulated mass, this blob of big business cooperating with the news media, cooperating with government, cooperating with foreign governments, as it were. And that's a very disturbing trend because, you know, we've always wanted in a democracy, especially in an American democracy, a free media, meaning free from domestic government interference. They could say what they want, do what they want, and the government's not going to crack down. But what they lost was that a media has to be free and independent of outside influence, whether that's money or power or what have you. And we've lost sight of that second value, independence. But we are seeing an independent media rising on platforms like yours, on social media, on blog, on podcasts, on Substack, where you have great journalists like Barry Weiss or Andrew Sullivan or Glenn Greenwald, who were previously at really big and influential media companies, going out on their own, taking the tools that they had acquired working in those places and using them in ways that are very independent because there's no one pulling the strings. They don't have to answer to a boss who has a boss who has a boss who has a boss. They can just do the reporting and do the work. And that's an incredibly great trend. I think that is so positive. And I think it's also really a paradigm shift in what the news media is and how it functions. And, you know, we're seeing it sort of like what crypto people would call a hard fork. Like they're diverging. They're going in two completely different directions. And I think the independent media is the one that will be the longer fork, the longer tooth of the fork. But you know, we'll see.
I totally agree. You start to see, you know, influential people having such a big following on podcasts and blogs and such things. I mean, for instance, like, you know, let's just say one of the biggest one, Joe Rogan out there. I mean, the amount of followers and influence one man has. I mean, he's completely independent from any kind of, you know, political or, you know, source as far as being, you know, part of a newspaper or anything like that. But then you got a newspaper like the New York Times, who is owned by one family. And that's kind of the issue at hand when you have something so influential that is only regulated by just a few people. What do you think is the independent media? Is that what's going to be the balance of all that? You think is that what's going to balance all that out and eventually, hopefully, overtake that helm?
I mean, I think so. I think it's looking like that because people just don't trust the media, the news media anymore. I mean, we're seeing that it's at all-time lows. And that's, you know, that's a good thing in a way because we're sort of weaning ourselves off of corporate media, but it's also a bad thing because you do want reliable sources of information. You do want people who are really being diligent and trying their best to bring you the truth. And we want to be able to trust those sources and know who they are and have a sort of common sense of what is real and what is not real that we share as a society. And I think that's, you know, that's where we need to find a middle ground, something that parses the best of both. But I think really what we are seeing is that social media and independent media are providing the counterweight to corporate media. And I think that that is really the encouraging trend.
Yeah, agreed 100%. You know, it seems like this trend with the printed media is starting to take the trend of television media as far as news is concerned, where it's not so much a you know, factual but more subjective type of, you know, outlet. And do you think it's what is happening right now is the news, the printed media trying to catch up with the video, you know, at how they present the news at this point?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's a good question because it talks about like what has the changing formats done to the nature of the news. And I think what it is that, yeah, that what's happened is the internet really broke the economic model of the news industry, which is that you had subscribers and you had advertising, and between the two of them, they could do really well. So advertising would be print ads, but it was also the classified ads in newspapers. and in some magazines. Craigslist destroyed classified ads. There was no longer a need for that. So that part of their revenue was gone. The internet's advertising model also killed advertising for them. They're now left with just subscription as their revenue model, which means that you're sort of pandering to a base of 2% of your total readership who actually pay you. And what that does is polarize your content, because you got to keep those people happy. There's only 2% of them. 98% could have this general consensus about common good and shared values and shared narratives. But the 2% over there, which might be really much more extreme, and probably are, because they're willing to part with their money for this stuff, they want what they want. And we're seeing that with the New York Times. The New York Times knows that it's generally kind of older, classical liberal audience base, its subscription base is sort of literally dying out. And in places, it's a more progressive, hard left, woke audience that is wanting that kind of content, and the Times is delivering on it. So the New York Times and other media have really taken social media to task for all the algorithms that are polarizing content, that are like delivering content that's very extreme in order to drive clicks. But the news media has done the exact same thing, certainly for the last decade and probably for much longer. So it's kind of this like interesting dynamic that's emerging where clickbait has really infected even the most prestigious legacy media brands like the New York Times. They write stuff that is very clickbaity. They need those page views. And more importantly, they really need those subscribers to sign up to get that juicy content, those like really like get it under your skin type stories that makes everyone really pissed.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
But that's not necessarily good for a healthy and thriving democracy.
No, of course not. Of course not. I don't know if you saw this thing that happened. I think it was last year, if I'm not mistaken, Ashley, but there was a news correspondent from ABC, and it was either he or she said something on a hot mic, basically saying, it was talking about Prince Andrew and saying, Prince Andrew, this and that, but I'm not allowed to say that right now. So we'll just go ahead and skip over this. Do you remember that incident?
It sounds familiar, but it sounds very much in keeping with what goes on in the media.
Yeah, it's so crazy that even other governments have influence on the media, even over here. You wouldn't think that would be the case, but it really does. I mean, I'm sure there's political issues between, countries where, hey, listen, we got an issue over here, can you help us out? Don't kind of put this out in the media, talk to, the family of the Times, it's so easy to do that. I mean, Don't you think that's what's happening in these cases as well?
I think that definitely happens a lot. And I also think that, there's the influence of money and of, whatever outlet that was, they want to get the interview with the royal down the line. They don't want to get blackballed by the palace. They're going to carry water, whatever they need to do to make sure that they get that access. And, that's okay. And for them, I mean, I think it's wrong, obviously, but I forget who exactly it was, but it was either Eric Weinstein or his brother, Brett Weinstein, talking a lot about the Jeffrey Epstein case and asking, why is there no media investigation ongoing? It happened. He, quote unquote, committed suicide. I don't think anyone really believes that. But then we never heard another peep from the media. You got to ask yourself, wait a second, this is an incredibly juicy, great, compelling story. Why is there not someone just dedicated to reporting on this for the next 5 years till we find, because it got shut down?
It got shut down. Yeah. And let me
shut it down.
Let me tell you something, Ashley. I live in West Palm Beach, and that's where it all happened. And let me tell you, we didn't hear anything about it. Nothing. It was happening in our backyard, and we heard nothing about it. Even, I mean, it was so crazy that we didn't hear about it, but we also I knew people that were involved in the case, but there was no media coverage of it. I was like, why is this not in the media? Why is this not in print? Why is this not on the television? Nobody spoke about it. They started to talk about it after he was captured and everything, was done. I mean, that's when they kind of started to cover it. But beforehand, when he was doing all that stuff and here in Palm Beach County, I mean, nothing was said about it. And again, that's what you're talking about. The suppression is powerful in itself. And it's funny because we did a podcast about 5 or 6 podcasts ago, and we talked about World War II, and we talked about spy gadgets and things that they used that was very ahead of its time during that time. They were using typewriters that were in this, like these luggage carriers, really cool things, right, for that time. But the most effective thing was propaganda, 100%. Propaganda was 100% effective 100% of the time. And that's what we're dealing with here on a daily basis. I mean, do you think that, for instance, like 9/11, do you think that was an art of propaganda? Because again, we talk about 9/11. We talk about how it was reported that, we were looking for weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. That was the reported story. People forget that before the 9/11 attack, Donald Rumsfeld said there was like $3 trillion missing from from our, our treasury. All these things that just kind of happened in a swirl all of a sudden. Do you think that's one of the more recent examples as well of what's going on here?
I mean, I certainly think that, by now it's clear the media advanced the notion, sold the notion to the public that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They did it hand in hand with the Bush administration, which was pushing the same idea.
Right.
And what was the mechanism that got them to do it? Was it pressure from the administration? Was it carrots and sticks? Was it something else? Was it groupthink, which was a term that emerged from that whole episode? Was it just people being really stupid? I don't know. I do know that in the New York Times' case, money and the desire to stay number one played a big role, because they, at the time, had just brought on a new editor-in-chief, or executive editor, as it's called at the New York Times. Mm-hmm. And this guy wanted to boost what he called the paper's competitive metabolism. He wanted to be competitive. He wanted to compete. He wanted to win. He wanted to stay number one. And that meant getting the biggest scoops of the day. And there was no bigger scoop in that period than WMDs in Iraq. Nothing bigger that you could get. And they did everything they needed to do to get it, even though it wasn't actually true. And they violated their own standards, their own policies. It didn't matter. They just kind of shoved it all aside to get this reporting that was false. They pushed it hard. And that's another part of how the media operates, is that they work hand in hand among different formats, different news companies. There are a lot of synergies, a lot of companies that are owned by the same parent company. So you have someone reporting something in a newspaper. The parent company also owns a TV show. The reporter goes on the TV show. That person then goes on the radio, owned by the same company. And then what you have is this huge megaphone effect where these people should be checking one another. They should be kind of challenging them, but rather what they're doing is amplifying the error. So whatever the cause was, and I don't know exactly what it was. I mean, I go into it in the book, but we know the outcome, and the outcome was a disaster. It was a huge foreign policy disaster, and we're still feeling the effects of it to this day.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Ashley, listen, I mean, this book, I think it's a great eye opener for people to really, delve into what our media consists of, and what we're constantly bombarded with too. That's another thing, whether you're online or you're watching television, you're constantly hit with it. And I think it's a good thing for people to kind of open their eyes and see what is possible. And, how, I think more now than ever, as a person that consumes news or any kind of information, either online or wherever the case may be, it's like you have to be your own fact checker too. That's a whole nother thing too. It's like if you see a story on ABC News or something like, say, or the New York Times, let's just say, it's just like, you can kind of take it with a grain of salt nowadays. It's not like before, like where they just stated the truth and that was it. Now you have to be like your own fact checker, right?
Yeah. And you know what? I don't think we could ever really take it at face value and just accept it. I think I think people did because it was just that they had no other option.
Right.
Today we have the options. We've got the tools. We've got the media. Like if you're listening to something about lab leak or China or COVID therapies, and the media is telling you the same thing across the board, then you can go on to Joe Rogan, who's bringing on top people in their fields, top scientists, top doctors, top whoever they are, and he'll talk to them for 2 hours, and you'll get the whole picture from that individual. So I do think you're right. I think you're right that we all need to go out and be our own kind of citizen journalist on the stories that matter to us individually.
Right. Exactly.
Don't try to get that smorgasbord of media garbage that we see every day published in yahoo.com or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that, 10,000 miles away, there was a riot, even though it's like, it makes for great clickbait. It's really juicy, but take 2 issues, take 3 issues that are important to you, investigate, find the people who are doing the good work, corroborate the sources, fact check what you're hearing, and you will be a more informed, more well-rounded, and I think a sort of spiritually and psychologically richer person for that.
Very well said. I mean, I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, listen, even now that I've become more aware to a lot of this stuff, and, a lot of people that I, converse with that are in the circles that we deal with, I like, for instance, like, even if I see a story online, I won't even click on it because I know that it's something that if I click on, I'm just adding fuel to the fire. So I'm not going to click on that story because I can see for it from face value from what it is. And I'm like, okay, let me do my own research. Let me figure this out on my own. But I'm not going to click that link because that link right there is just going to add more bravado to whatever it is that they're trying to push out there.
Yeah, that's right. I think a lot of it is about kind of quietly avoiding 99% of that stuff because you don't really need it. It's serving someone else. It's serving people who own the sites that you're clicking on, and it doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve your community and your family. And those, if we start thinking about that and thinking about the local journalism again, the truly local journalism, which is not about, some crazy homicide that happened across town. It's about what's going on in your community around you. And you should know, and you should be out there talking about it. And even if it seems trivial, like, there's no parking in my neighborhood, or there's whatever's going on, like, be interested in it and talk about it online and find the facts. And like, I think it engenders something very healthy, which is that shared version of reality that we can all debate and come to some sort of agreement on. I think that is a great thing. And yeah, I think that is definitely the way forward for most of us.
Hey, listen, I think that's a great way to end this, but it's thegrayladywink.com. That's where they can find the book, correct, Ashley?
Yeah, The Gray Lady Winked, which is gray with an A, not an E. And or you can Google it, it'll pop up. And from there, it'll tell you all about the book. It'll tell you where to get it. And yeah, that's it.
Wonderful. And so one last thing I wanted to ask you, Ashley, your upcoming book regarding your best friend. Could you give me a little bit of a snapshot about what that's about?
Yeah, sure. My best friend, sort of a guy who I grew up with, went to college with, and after college we sort of roomed together and were working on some stuff together. And he took a trip to Nicaragua and disappeared on an island, and took close to a month for the search teams to find his remains. I went there to try to find some answers, to try to understand what happened. I spent 2 months in the country, or a little bit more actually, and I really was trying to find what went on in this insane story of this college graduate who had no business being in this incredibly treacherous forest on an island that is also a volcano. And from that, I sort of kind of was inspired to tell a story that was sort of based in my experience searching for answers. And that became a novel that is called He Falls Alone.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Listen, I'm looking forward to that as well. That sounds like really something, really inspiring and really interesting. I mean, that's just a tragic story, and I'm sorry that you lost your best friend in that circumstance. And I probably would have done the same thing. My co-host of the podcast, we've been friends for 30 years. So, when you're friends, I love that. Yeah, when you're friends with somebody, you really kind of want to find out, especially when they, tragically pass away in a circumstance like that. So listen, Ashley, thank you so much for coming on Dark Fringe Radio. Again, you can find the book, The Gray Lady Wink. That's the GRAY, thegrayladywink.com. You can pick up the book there. I highly suggest you guys check it out. It's a great way. It's a great introspective look of our media and how the New York Times has really changed a lot of things to push a narrative. But I really, really appreciate you, Ashley, for coming on Dark Fringe Radio.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Mel.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Ashley Rindsberg. Again, the author, and he is the journalist for The Gray Lady Winked. And of course, you can pick up the book again at thegrayladywink.com. So go right to that website. You can check out the book there. Highly recommend it. Highly entertaining interview that I had with Ashley, really eye-opening, and I encourage everybody to pick up the book and do some more research. I mean, there's a lot of this out there. We talk about the New York Times being one of the prolific newspapers in the world, and here in the United States, of course, but there's still about another half a dozen newspapers out there that haven't even been talked about, that are just as influential as well. Even from BBC, all that stuff. So again, check it out. The Gray Lady Wink, that's GRAY, thegrayladywink.com. Check out Ashley Rindsberg's book, and we highly recommend it. So Jay, again, that's it for tonight. Just want to remind everybody how you can listen to the podcast. Go to our website, darkfringeradio.com. Go there directly and pick up everything that you need as far as Dark Fringe Radio is concerned. And I think that's about it for tonight, Jay. You have anything else for the outro?
That's it, my guy. You wrapped it up in a nice little bow.
Nice. Awesome. So listen, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Dark Fringe Radio. Again, please be on the lookout for some cool shit that we're going to be doing this month regarding watch along, some live events. So please be on the lookout on our social media at Dark Fringe Radio, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So make sure you check that out. Keep up to date. Again, thank you, Jay, so much for coming on this week for another episode of Dark Fringe Radio. And we'll see you guys again next week.